It started with a look. Then the tone. By the time we got to that banquet, I think Carol had already stopped seeing me as a person. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just background noise. The guy who takes out the trash, pays the mortgage, picks up groceries. She didn't talk to me so much as talk at me. Asked questions without waiting for the answers. Rolled her eyes when I mentioned work, like she was already bored with the idea of me speaking. I told myself it was stress. Long hours. Executive pressure. Deadlines. But deep down I knew something had shifted. Something had cracked. For months, it had been building. Her phone always face down. Late meetings with no explanation. A different perfume. Sharper, more expensive than the one I bought her last Christmas. She started getting dressed for work in a way she never had before. Full makeup, heels, accessories. I noticed, of course I did. I'm not blind. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that guy. The paranoid husband. The one who makes accusations because he's scared of losing something. Or someone. The irony is I'd already lost her. I just hadn't realized it yet. The banquet was held in Austin, at one of those luxury hotels that charge more for bottled water than I used to make in a day. Carol organized the whole thing herself. Said it was a celebration of her team's success. But everyone there knew it was about her. The way the staff fawned over her, the way her colleagues smiled too hard when she approached, the way they called her the boss, even when they didn't have to. She was the show. The centerpiece. Untouchable. I played along. Wore the suit she bought me 2 years ago, even though the sleeves felt tight now. Smiled when she introduced me to people who immediately forgot my name. Laughed politely when someone made a joke I didn't understand. And the whole time I watched her. Watched the way she floated from person to person like a queen making her rounds. She never looked back at me. Never checked if I was okay. Never even offered me a drink. I stood by the wall like a damn coat rack. She eventually got up on stage, flanked by people I barely knew, and gave this perfectly rehearsed speech. She talked about growth, innovation, leadership. About lifting others up and building a legacy. She looked stunning, I'll admit that. The lighting hit her just right, and for a second, I saw the woman I fell in love with. The one who used to fall asleep next to me watching terrible documentaries and snort laugh at my stupid impressions. But then she turned to me. She smiled, poised and radiant, and said, "And of course, my husband's here tonight. He made it on time, for once." Laughter. Just enough of it. Some chuckled politely, others looked around, not sure if they should be laughing or not. She moved on without missing a beat. Kept going like she hadn't just gut-punched me in front of a room full of strangers. But I felt it. Sharp and humiliating. Like I'd just been called out for being insignificant. A burden. A joke. She didn't mean it as a joke, though. Not really. That line had weight. Like it had been waiting for the right moment to escape. And she picked a room full of people, a stage, and a microphone to finally let it out. I didn't flinch. Didn't smile. Didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I just stood there while everyone clapped, my face frozen, my hands in my pockets. I counted to 5. Then 10. Then I turned and walked out of that ballroom like a man leaving his own funeral. The hallway outside was long and dimly lit. The kind where your footsteps echo. I didn't look back. I didn't stop at the bar, didn't get a drink. I just kept walking until I hit the cold outside air and let it fill my lungs. I stood there on the curb, next to a valet stand, staring at the cars as they pulled in and out. I didn't feel anything at first. No anger. No sadness. Just stillness. Like everything inside me had gone quiet all at once. That was the moment, I think. The real break. Not when I saw her laugh with someone else. Not when I found what I found later. It was that exact moment, when she humiliated me with a smile and didn't even notice, that something inside me stopped trying. I walked a few blocks to nowhere. No destination. Just needed to move. Let my body do something while my brain tried to catch up. I didn't text her. Didn't call. I left my phone in my pocket and just kept walking past neon bars and dim alleyways and overpriced food trucks. I thought about getting on a bus, just to see how far I could go without speaking to anyone. Just exist in motion for a while. I ended up at some dive bar, the kind with sticky floors and a jukebox that only plays sad songs. Sat at the far end and ordered a whiskey neat. The bartender didn't ask any questions. Just slid the glass across the wood and moved on. I appreciated that. Silence felt like mercy at that point. I sat there until my drink was gone. Then I ordered another. Eventually, I took out my phone. I had a message from her. Just one. "Where did you go?" Not even a question mark. Like she couldn't be bothered to press the key. I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen, then put it face down on the bar like she always did. Like she taught me. That was the night I knew. Not just that something was wrong, but that something was over. Maybe it had been for a while. Maybe I'd just been the last one to admit it. But that was the night I realized my marriage had turned into a performance. And I wasn't even part of the show anymore. I was the backdrop, the prop she wheeled out for company optics. And I'd had enough of playing the fool. 3 weeks before that banquet, something in me snapped. I wouldn't call it jealousy. Not even paranoia. It was more like a survival instinct kicking in. I needed answers, not the kind you get from awkward conversations or vague apologies. I needed data. Proof. The truth, stripped of performance and lies. So I installed monitoring software on Carol's phone. She hadn't given me a reason to trust her in months. The emotional distance, the secrecy, the passive digs. And while I hadn't caught her in a lie yet, my gut was screaming at me that something was off. I'd ignored it for too long. So I did what any broken, suspicious, halfway checked out husband would do when the silence got too loud. I crossed a line. I don't even remember what excuse I used to get access to her phone. Something stupid. My charger isn't working, maybe. Or, can I look up directions real quick? The kind of things that seem harmless when you say them out loud, but have consequences when you follow through. She handed it over without hesitation, and within minutes, I had what I needed. The app was invisible, undetectable. It mirrored everything: texts, location, app data. Even her camera roll when I needed it. At first, I didn't check it every day. I told myself I wasn't like that. That this was just reassurance. But within a week, I was addicted. Every buzz on her phone became my business. Every ping of her GPS a breadcrumb. And what I found wasn't just a trail, it was a damn map. Tuesday afternoons. Friday mornings. Hotel check-ins, always the same place. The Omni downtown. A corner suite on the 14th floor, booked under a fake name. I traced the alias, Frank Donahue. Her boss. I remember just staring at that name the first time I saw it. Frank. Of course. The man who called her a rock star, in meetings. The one who sent her late-night texts about quarterly goals and checking in. I had met him once. He was polite in that overly charming, insincere way. Strong handshake. Overused cologne. And now, apparently, he was screwing my wife. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because what I found next went beyond cheating. This wasn't just about hotel rooms and whispered phone calls. This was a full-blown operation. There were emails, hidden in an encrypted app she didn't even bother to lock properly. They talked about numbers, bonuses, skimming. Carol had access to expense accounts. She handled signing authority for incentive payouts. And Frank? He had the power to approve them. They had a whole system. Create a fake vendor. Submit invoices. Approve bonuses for phantom employees. Funnel the money. Wash it through dummy accounts. Disappear. That was the endgame. I found it spelled out in a draft email she never sent, probably just used as a planning doc. The subject line read, Costa Rica timeline. Costa Rica. That's where they were going. Carol had even bookmarked rental properties down there. One place had an infinity pool overlooking the jungle. 2 bedrooms. Fully furnished. Paid in crypto. They had plans. Real ones. A shared drive with spreadsheets. A folder labeled Exit Strategy. She had written it all down. My wife was preparing to vanish with another man and start a new life, while I stood in our kitchen trying to figure out if she was just having a bad week. It didn't feel real at first. I kept reading the messages over and over, hoping I was misinterpreting something. hoping maybe it was some kind of elaborate prank or test or inside joke. But the details were too precise. Too intentional. These weren't daydreams, or was. This was a playbook. And they were already in the final quarter. She wasn't just betraying me. She was preparing to destroy everything. I started saving everything. Backing it up, copying files to encrypted drives, printing screenshots and email threads. I set up a secure folder on a cloud server only I could access. I organized it like a case file. Folders for messages, location logs, hotel records. I even had timestamps matched to security camera footage I pulled using old credentials from a consulting job I once had with the same hotel chain. Nobody knew I still had back-end access. They really should change their passwords more often. Every time Carol smiled at me or kissed me on the cheek before bed, I added another document to the folder. Every "love you" she tossed over her shoulder like a coin into a well, I filed another record. I watched her lie to me in real time while collecting enough evidence to break her. And the strangest thing? I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt calm. Methodical. Almost mechanical. Like the betrayal had switched something off in me. My love for her, the version of her I once knew, had been dead for a while. I was just now beginning to accept it. I wasn't going to yell or beg. I wasn't going to cry or break things or drown in some pity spiral. I was going to end this my way. Quietly. Strategically. Without ever raising my voice. And by the time she realized what was happening, it would already be too late. The morning after the banquet, I woke up before the sun. Not because I couldn't sleep, though I hadn't, but because I knew today was the day. The day I stopped observing and started moving. There was no more wondering, no more second-guessing. I had the evidence. I had the motive. I had the plan. Carol was still asleep when I left the house. She looked peaceful. Ironic, right? She probably thought everything was still under control. That I'd taken her little public humiliation like a good boy. That I'd sulk a bit, maybe pout in silence for a few days, and then crawl back into the corner she put me in. But I wasn't pouting. I was planning. I went to the office, though I didn't plan on doing any actual work. I had a separate laptop for this, one she didn't know about. It was air-gapped, encrypted, no cloud sync, no auto backups. The kind of setup I used back when I did freelance penetration testing for law firms and high-net-worth clients. Ironically, Carol used to tease me for being paranoid. Said I was too into my tinfoil hat nonsense. I bet she's not laughing now. The first step was documentation. All of it. I compiled every single message, bank transfer, and hotel booking into neatly arranged folders. I included cross-references, timestamps, metadata. I built a timeline that showed exactly when each transaction occurred, down to the minute. Where they were. What device they used. I even tracked when they stopped using hotel Wi-Fi and switched to cellular data, probably thinking they were being smart. Amateurs. I put it all on a drive. Printed key pages. Color-coded the financial fraud. Highlighted the internal memos that would fry Carol's ass when HR saw them. Then I drafted a cover letter, anonymous, polite, with bullet points. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. The data spoke for itself. I made 2 packages. One went in the mail to her company's legal department, certified, return receipt requested. The other was for someone I hadn't talked to in years. His name was Ray Delgado. He was an investigative journalist I helped out back when I was still doing contract work for a cybersecurity nonprofit. He owed me a favor. One phone call later, I told him I was cashing it in. I have a tip, I said flatly. Hot or lukewarm? Explosive. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway across town. I showed up with a copy of the files on a flash drive inside an empty Altoids tin. Ray opened his laptop, skimmed through the contents, and his eyebrows shot up before he'd even gotten through the first folder. Jesus Christ, he muttered. She's VP of Finance? And this guy, Frank Donahue, he's her boss? I nodded. Holy shit. He didn't ask questions. Just closed the lid and said, "Give me 48 hours. He took his coffee to go. I stayed behind. It was just before noon when the first domino fell. I was back at my desk, pretending to type emails, when Carol called me. "Hey," she said, all casual. "You want to do dinner tonight? Maybe decompress a little from yesterday?" I stared at the phone like it was speaking another language. Her voice sounded so normal. Like we were fine. Like nothing had shifted. "I've got a late meeting," I lied. "Rain check." She didn't argue. "Sure," she said. "Let's do Friday then." I wanted to laugh. By 1:30, things started to move fast. Her company's systems flagged suspicious financial patterns. I know this because Ray texted me a screenshot from a Slack channel he had access to through one of his sources. Someone was blowing the whistle. Someone had attached files. My files. At 2:10 p.m., Donahue attempted to wire $75,000 to an account in Belize. At 2:12 p.m., the transaction was frozen by the company's financial monitoring system. At 2:16, the legal department emailed Frank, requesting an immediate meeting. And at 2:24, I saw the story hit a private financial oversight blog that Ray had contributed to. Just a teaser at first. Something about pending corporate fraud investigations tied to upcoming executive transitions. It didn't name Carol yet, but it would. By 3 o'clock, her department was locked out of certain files. Access restricted. Admin privileges suspended. IT audits initiated. At 3:22, Frank Donahue walked out of the building. Carol had no idea any of this was happening. I could picture it, her at her desk, sipping green tea, glancing over spreadsheets she had no idea were now pieces of evidence. Then came the tap on her shoulder. The polite request from HR to join them upstairs. "Bring your laptop," they probably said. She called me at 4:41 p.m. I let it ring. Watched her name flash across the screen like a warning flare. Then I turned my phone face down on the table, just like she always did. She called again. And again. Voicemails, texts. First asking. Then begging. By 5:30, it hit the news cycle. A mid-sized outlet picked up the story. VP of Finance and CO advisor under investigation for internal fraud. Her name wasn't buried in the article. It was in the damn headline. And Donahue? They had a photo. Him and Carol together at some ribbon-cutting event. Smiling like they owned the world. Carol came home at 6:07 p.m. She slammed the front door. I heard her heels echo across the floor like gunshots. "Where the hell are you?" she screamed. I didn't answer right away. I waited until she stormed into the living room, her makeup smeared, phone still clutched in her hand, shaking. "You did this," she said, voice cracking. "You son of a bitch. You set me up." "No," I said calmly. "I exposed you. You ruined my life." I stood up slowly. "You ruined it when you thought I wouldn't notice. When you thought I'd just roll over and take it." She looked around, like maybe she could still talk her way out. Charm her way past the damage. But there was nothing left to save. Not for her. I walked into the other room and came back with a folder. I handed it to her without saying a word. Inside were the hotel photos. The reservation receipts. The printout of her draft email, the one that laid out the whole Costa Rica plan. She flipped through it with trembling hands. When she got to the last page, she looked up at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. "Why didn't you just confront me?" she whispered. "Because you wouldn't have told the truth," I said. And I wanted the world to hear it, not just me. She stood there for a long time, shaking. And then she said the one thing I didn't expect. "I'll destroy you." I almost laughed. "No," I said, my voice cold. "You won't. You can't." She didn't know it yet, but every asset tied to my name had already been protected. Every account, every trust, every investment had been moved. I'd been planning this longer than she could imagine. There was nothing left for her to leverage. Nothing for her to take. All she had left was panic. And it was just getting started. The day after everything hit, Carol came home like a storm tearing through drywall. I heard her car before I saw her, tires screeching into the driveway like she was trying to run the whole house over. She burst through the front door carrying a half-zipped handbag, a broken heel dangling from one finger, and rage radiating off her like heat from a busted radiator. She didn't say anything at first. Just paced the living room, tossing things, pillows, keys, her work badge, onto the floor. Her face was red, her eyes wild. I just watched from the kitchen, sipping coffee like I was waiting on the weather to change. Then she snapped. "You think you're so smart," she hissed, spinning to face me. "You think you're going to come out of this clean?" I didn't respond. "They're suspending me," she shouted, pointing a shaking hand toward nothing in particular. "You know what that means? No severance. No benefits. And Frank? That coward flipped the moment legal started poking around. He's not returning my calls. He blocked me." Her voice cracked at the end. I saw the panic break through the rage for a second. Just a flash. "He took a deal," I said evenly. "Gave them everything." She blinked, stunned. "How do you know that?" I tilted my head. "You think they didn't call me? That I wasn't contacted? I'm your husband, Carol. Legally tied to your mess. I've got lawyers screening everything that hits my mailbox now. You dragged me into this, and I made sure they knew exactly how far from it I stood." She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. And then she started breaking things. Not just little things. She went to the bookshelf and started ripping down framed photos, wedding gifts, her MBA diploma, everything that once meant something. Glass shattered across the hardwood floor. A vase her sister gave us exploded like it had been waiting for the excuse. "You're loving this, aren't you?" she screamed, spinning around. "You think this makes you powerful? Watching me lose everything?" "No," I said. "I think it makes me free." She lunged for my laptop on the counter. I moved faster, grabbed it before she could get her hands on it. "Don't," I said. "Trust me. You won't like what's on there." She stood there panting, chest heaving like she'd just sprinted a mile. Then her voice went low, cold. "Dangerous. I'll make sure you regret this." I nodded slowly, like I'd been expecting that line. "Let's talk about what you still have to regret," I said, and walked into the other room. I came back with a binder. She recognized it immediately, brown leather cover, silver corner brackets, the one that held all our documents. Tax forms, property deeds, account statements. Except this version had some new pages added. I laid it open on the dining table. She didn't move at first, but I could see her eyes scanning the pages. She saw the trust, the pre-marriage financial protection clauses, the closed joint accounts, the notarized signature she didn't remember signing because I'd slipped it into a stack of refinance papers last fall. "You've got nothing," I said, finally stepping away. "The house is in a trust. The vehicles are in my business name. The retirement accounts were shifted to Solo 401(k)(s). Everything was done months ago. Everything was legal. Documented. Transparent, except from you." She sat down without meaning to, like her legs just gave out. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I should have felt something. Guilt. Pity. Vindication. But all I felt was relief. Like I had finally dropped a bag of bricks I'd been carrying around for a decade. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you were planning to vanish," I said. "To run with him and leave me here to pick up the pieces. I just beat you to it." She flipped through the pages with trembling fingers. Her hand paused on a printout of the Costa Rica villa listing, her name and Frank's fake LLC sitting at the bottom like a final punchline. "You did this," she muttered, still not looking at me. "You destroyed everything." I leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "No, Carol. I just let the truth out of its cage." There was a long silence then. Just her breathing, shallow and uneven, and the soft tick of the kitchen clock. I could tell she was working through the math in her head, trying to figure out how far the damage went. How much was salvageable? The answer was nothing. The phone started ringing. Her phone. Then mine. I didn't check the caller ID. I didn't need to. I knew the vultures were circling. Investigators. Lawyers. Reporters, probably. One of the blogs had already updated their article with her headshot and a direct quote from an internal whistleblower. Ray texted me a link. Said it was going wide. She finally stood up. Picked up the binder. Held it to her chest like a shield. "You're going to pay for this," she said one more time. I shook my head slowly. "You already did." She walked out. Slammed the door. The house rattled, but I stayed perfectly still, breathing in the silence she left behind. That night, I boxed up everything she hadn't taken. Her clothes, her books, her perfume bottles lined up like little lies on the bathroom shelf. I didn't throw anything out. I just organized it. Labeled the boxes with painter's tape. Master closet, office drawer, vanity stuff. I wanted it all ready for when she came to collect what was left. She didn't come the next day. Or the next. But eventually she would. And when she did, the house wouldn't be a crime scene anymore. It would be clean. Quiet. And hers no longer. The days that followed were quieter than they should have been. The kind of quiet that doesn't bring peace, just space for the damage to echo louder. Carol didn't come home after that night. She sent a courier to pick up her things. Not even a text. The driver was some kid with gauges in his ears and a clipboard. He looked around like he expected to find bodies on the floor. I handed him 3 labeled boxes and shut the door before he could say a word. From that point on, I watched everything unravel from a distance. The first crack was her corporate account being deactivated. A former colleague of hers, one I used to run into at company dinners, messaged me on LinkedIn, "I heard what's happening. Are you okay?" I ignored it. People always reach out when they want to feel close to someone else's wreckage. It's not empathy, it's curiosity with manners. Next came the headlines. Bigger outlets picked up the story. Ray's article hit a syndicate, and suddenly Carol's name was showing up in sidebars next to terms like embezzlement and executive fraud probe. They dug up old press releases, a podcast interview she'd done 2 years back about ethics in finance. It made the whole thing look like satire. She became a punchline before the dust had even settled. I didn't celebrate. Not even in private. There was no part of this that felt good. Just necessary. Her name was stripped from company documents by the end of the week. They replaced her photo on the leadership page with a grayscale logo and the words, "Interim Leadership Transition." But the real break came when Frank turned on her. Fully. He cut a deal. I found out through a reporter Ray put me in touch with. Frank gave prosecutors everything. Internal messages, audio logs from a burner app, bank statements, everything that proved he and Carol were at the center of the scheme. But what really sunk her were the private chats. I'd seen some of them already through the mirrored app on her phone. But Frank's copies included voice messages. Her voice. Talking about pulling the ripcord and skimming the float. The tone wasn't remorseful. It was cocky, confident. Like she'd already won. They played them at a grand jury hearing. It made the local news. One of the clips, her laughing about rebranding in Costa Rica, was aired during the 6 p.m. broadcast. They blurred her photo, but it didn't matter. Everyone already knew. Our neighbors knew. Her coworkers. Her parents. The villa? Seized by the Costa Rican government before they even set foot on it. Frank's accounts were frozen by the IRS. Carol's access to everything, from corporate cards to private accounts, was revoked in under 72 hours. She texted me once during the fallout. It was just one line, "You destroyed me." I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. I didn't need to keep it. I already knew what she'd say if I gave her the chance. "You're heartless. You're vindictive. You should have just left." But here's the thing, she wasn't sorry. Not for cheating. Not for planning to disappear. She was only sorry she got caught. She was only devastated because someone pulled the curtain back before she could vanish behind it. And I had made sure it happened before she even packed a bag. The subpoenas started coming in by week 2. Federal, corporate. Her email activity, transaction history, and employment records were all part of an ongoing audit. Her lawyer, a guy I recognized from billboards, issued a statement claiming she was cooperating fully. But everyone could see through it. She was radioactive. Her name was scrubbed from anything tied to public success. Old blog posts she'd written were deleted. Panels she'd spoken on were edited to omit her name. Her LinkedIn disappeared. Her Instagram went private. And just like that, the woman who once called herself a builder of empires was reduced to a footnote in a cautionary tale. People stopped asking how I was doing after the 3rd week. That's the timeline for sympathy, I guess. After that, you're just expected to move on. But what no one understood was that I already had. The second she chose frank over honesty, the second she looked me in the eye and still decided to lie, I started letting go. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been too easy. It was like watching a painting get soaked in water, color bleeding out, detail vanishing until all you have left is a stain. I spent my nights in the office, working with the blinds half closed. My own company had picked up 2 new clients, a private security firm and a government subcontractor. They didn't care about my personal life. They just wanted secure endpoints and clean logs. And for the first time in months, I felt useful again. Not as someone's husband. As myself. There were still moments when it hit me, at night mostly, when I'd pass by the closet and see the hanger where her red dress used to be. The one she wore to the banquet. The one she wore the night everything clicked. Funny, the smallest things carry the biggest weight. Like the coffee mug she left in the dishwasher, stained with old lipstick. Or the password she used for every damn account, Lotus 19, a nod to some yoga retreat she did years ago with Frank's wife. His wife. Did I mention he was married, too? Their affair wasn't just selfish, it was calculated destruction, burning 2 households to the ground so they could live on a cliffside in someone else's name. And yet, even with all the chaos, all the headlines and investigations and burned bridges, I didn't feel like I'd won. Because this wasn't a game. There was no prize at the end. Just clarity. And maybe that was enough. I wasn't better off without her. I was just back to neutral. Back to baseline. No longer waking up to lies. No longer playing the role of the fool while someone else rewrote the rules in secret. She gambled with both our lives. I just made sure she paid the price. And if you're wondering whether I still think about her, sure. I do. But not in the way she'd hope. Carol was indicted 2 weeks after Frank's deal went public. Mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. The works. Her attorney begged for leniency, but the DA wasn't budging. She spent her nights in county holding, days shuffled between hearings. Her parents called me once. I let it ring. I wasn't part of her cleanup crew. The Costa Rica dream vanished. Her reputation, gone. Nobody answered her calls. HR emails bounced back. Frank? He moved out of state, flipped his narrative, played the victim. Carol got left behind in the wreckage, exactly where she left me. Only difference? I walked out with a plan. She crawled out with nothing. Months later, in my new apartment, I got a package. No return address. Inside, 1 slice of carrot cake, sealed in plastic. Her favorite. Along with a handwritten note. Thought you might want a bite of the life you threw away. No apology. No regret. Just spite in frosting form. I stared at it for a minute, then dropped it in the trash. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. I had already won. She thought betrayal could go unanswered. But I stayed silent. I watched. I prepared. And when the time came, I didn't scream. I dismantled her world piece by piece.